As we begin our video journey to the heart of rock and roll, let's listen to probably the only true thing that Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics ever laid down on vinyl. Appropriately enough, it was recorded backwards. When we play the tape reversed, we hear,
"Consensus programming is dangerous to your health. The brainwashed do not know they are brainwashed.
The brainwashed do not know they're brainwashed."
Boys Bible Study. As always, this is Ash. I'm here with my co-hosts
Scott
and Julian.
And today we are watching something a little darker than our normal fare. This was brought to our attention by our very good friend Bret Berg, who does a show that I know some of you listening to this watch regularly. It's one of our faves as well, Museum of Home Video. Bret, welcome, and please tell us what we're talking about today.
Thanks, all. I'm glad to be back, and we are covering something very special to me because it's accompanied me on my own found footage journey over the years. We're going to be talking about a late 80s documentary production called Hell's Bells, The Dangers of Rock and Roll, and this is narrated, produced, directed, starring a guy named Eric Holmberg, who I don't know that much about, but I have a feeling as we talk about this, we're going to find out a lot about him just through our shared interpretation of him.
Yeah, I think so too. We were talking about this a little beforehand, but I did like absolutely the most cursory a bit of research on him, meaning I typed his name into Google, and the first thing that popped up was his LinkedIn, which proves to me that he's still going. He's still like public facing, represents Real Ministries.
Great name.
So good. Very jealous of that one. But like, as far as I can tell, his vibe is that he's like, you know, he's a Christian, a very serious Christian, but he's also like good looking and kind of has like a face for video, and you know, he can sort of like pass as like a cool hip guy. I mean, he has a mullet in this particular video, which is, you know, its own thing, but like in the context of the time period, I'd say he looks like pretty cool and handsome, and he is the one who's soberly telling us about the evils of rock and roll.
There's something about him. I like watching him. He's kind of like the Andy Griffith of Satanic Panic.
They cover so many bands in this movie, like so many bands, that it's like you definitely had fun listening to all these bands, whoever did all this research.
Absolutely.
I had fun watching all of them. There's so many bands that I forgot about that I was like, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you all. Do we think that Eric Holmberg is a rock fan? Because he states at the outset he's not really here to hate on rock artists, even though it seems like that is what he's doing. But at least he's doing it with humor. So it's like, even if we don't agree with what he's saying, at least you can watch Hell's Bells without hating yourself, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. Honestly, Scott, it kind of reminded me of what you said about like wanting to be, when you were a kid, wanting to be like a Christian movie reviewer.
Yeah, I wanted to be a reviewer for the publication Plugged In so that I could watch all of the movies. So, and then I get to be the gatekeeper and watch everything and let people know what's not Christian enough or not. I thought of that same thing watching this, being like, somebody else wants to do that with rock music.
That makes sense because, like, I mean, his taste in music is like, you know, pretty sophisticated. He knows what he's talking about. I guess just to back up a little bit, we should mention, and Bret, I'd like to know, you know, sort of how you came about this and what originally struck you about it. But in essence, it is a documentary from a Christian perspective that talks all about how rock and roll is like very clearly the instrument of the devil, and that it's like a very insidious plot to just like poison our entire culture and turn it against God.
Nowadays, it's improv comedy and podcasts.
I'm very fascinated by how he equates rock and pop so that Prince and Madonna have equal weight with Venom and Christian Death.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. But okay, so I came across this documentary probably about 15 to 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I'd say. I was working at my video store job at Cinephile Video, which is still there in Santa Monica, thankfully. It's got a new owner now. And it was an early Bizarro documentary tape that wandered into our inventory. And the original thing is 3 hours long. There is a fuck ton of scripture, way more so than the 90-minute version I've made as a fan edit. But it's we bought it probably sight unseen. It's like sounded great, and then for years we fetishized the tape. It may have been in our holy fucking shit section, which was where we put things that we couldn't really describe, but that gave like a real excited fist pumping vibe, I guess you could say. And we just always pushed it on people as we thought it was like a great party tape, because they talk about all the bands you like. And this tape really only makes one want to like them more. Kind of like how I imagine a QAnon person, when everyone around them tells them they're crazy, they just want to dig in more.
Right.
You know? I don't know. We just passed this tape around like a virus. And then once Cinefamily started, I believe Hell's Bells was the very first presentation officially when the place opened its doors. And
really?
Halloween week of 2007. And Hell's Bells was the very first night. The second night, I think, was either Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. It was just part of that week. And I hadn't thought about the tape in a while, but the others at the theater had gotten entranced with it again. And so they did an edit that was like about 90 minutes. I don't remember seeing that edit, so mine is probably roughly the same, but it's just my version of it. And I don't know, this tape worms its way into your heart. We've been so accustomed to satanic panic stuff being like just rotten, you know, like the worst people make it. But this, I mentioned he's like the Andy Griffith of Satanic Panic. He's like that and the Lenny Riefenstahl of Satanic Panic. He makes Satanic Panic seem mildly plausible.
Yes. Yeah, it's probably the best presentation of it I've personally seen. I am grateful that you cut it down for us, because like in the 90 minutes that you showed to us, like I just can't believe how much ground he covers. Like I took a lot of notes. It was very like difficult to keep up with all his like arguments, not because they were poorly presented, in fact, just the opposite, but it was just like he honestly had so much cultural evidence he had assembled to back up his claims that it was like pretty impressive.
Speaking of evidence and backing up his claims real quick, there's like two moments I noticed where he says other religions claim Jesus too, but we have irrefutable evidence that
Yes,
like my religion is the right one that worships Jesus, and then they give no evidence. And then not too much longer later, he says the crucifixion and Jesus' resurrection is one of the most logically proven events in ancient history, and then doesn't add anything to that whatsoever.
The cross is at the heart of the Christian faith. Apart from the crucifixion and subsequent resurrection of Jesus, which, by the way, is one of the most logically proven events in ancient history.
It's conceivable in the 3-hour version that he does kind of dig into that a little bit more, but honestly, it just didn't hit me in the right way. So,
oh boy, James O'Keefe over here with your tricky editing.
Oh, the editing is absolutely selective, but it was more for what would excite a future audience rather than because you have to consider that this tape is only really for the people of its time. There's no, like, you can't play it now and have it mean the same thing explicitly, because there's just way more BIPOC folks in pop music.
Sure.
I'd say. And like any read on rock and pop as being satanic has a way heavier, even heavier ring to it now than it would then, I think.
And everyone knows now that John Lennon and the band Ludacris are basically the same, so it would be not even worth mentioning in a documentary at this point.
Well, we were talking about how this whole thing is incredibly well researched, more so than any other Satanic Panic thing from the era. I mean, it's like they zip back and forth between Zodiac Mind Warp and Lydia Lunch and Diamanda Galas. Like, he also seems to talk about it like he knows what they are, and I don't know if it's him or just a researcher who knows what it is.
It's like, I mean, he talks about the Frogs like they're some hugely popular band.
Yeah, that was cool.
Taking this theme even further is the homosexual group, the Frogs. Their album cover features a very young boy wearing a pink triangle, a symbol within the militant homosexual movement, and includes songs like Gather Round for Savior Number 2.
I mean, he just talks about every little band, like he talks about Psychic TV, like they're on with the same tone as he talks about like Black Sabbath and the Beatles. So if you don't know any of these bands, you just assume that like, oh, all people, I mean, and this is like way before you could just Google a band and listen to their entire discography on YouTube. So like, if you don't know anything about any of this music, you would just assume that all of these, like the most insanely satanic bands are just as popular as like the Beatles. If you're into rock music or in secular society.
Yeah, they're all on equal playing field. Like, as many kids are, going to a Coil concert as a Madonna concert or something like that. It's pretty funny.
It kind of felt like the research was just going to a bunch of record stores and flipping through like the heavy metal sections and pulling out every album that had a pentagram on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it was like that movie Day of the Beast, where at the beginning, the priest, he needs to learn everything he can about the devil. So he just goes to the closest record store and is like, what's your most extreme metal? Tell me now. And he just like starts playing him a bunch of stuff.
Well, okay. So if this whole thing is well researched, even if the host doesn't get in on what the rock actually is, but I have a question for you all. Because this video is like way more intelligent than Satanic Panic stuff usually is. Was this video for the average Christian consumer of Satanic Panic content? Who was this for? What was this video's native audience?
Oh, man, that's
I don't know.
Teens to teach them about cool bands.
I was thinking it was for the parents of teens. Like, it's for parents who find that their teenager has started listening to music like this, but they're still not like fully engaged in it yet. Unfortunately, I feel like if that's the case, then you are definitely going to get your teen to go like full hog into Satanism and heavy metal if you show them this tape.
Well, right. That's the thing. It's like, I think I agree with what you're saying, Julian, but at the same time, as I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, it's like, it is just so cataloged. It's clearly like a skeleton key to getting into so many different types of music. Like, it feels more than anything like an encyclopedia of that music, even though it's presented as being like against what these people are doing. I think I think I agree though. I think it's supposed to be a parent's guide, but the zeal of the research and the presentation got so like out of hand of the original scope of the project that it like took on a completely different form.
You talked about Kenneth Anger. Like, where are people seeing Kenneth Anger films in the 1989 or whenever this came out?
That's a very
so
good point.
funny.
Sitting next to their stack of like 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter prints, like, maybe I should get rid of some of this stuff. I didn't really think about its satanic principles.
And first editions of Aleister Crowley pamphlets and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was just such like a catalog of things that it just felt like whatever teen is watching this when they show it in like Sunday school or whatever, they didn't plan. I don't know what happens at Sunday school, but they get to watch a movie for the day and they show this one. It feels like whoever is watching it is probably just like writing down every single one of these awesome things that they're showing.
Yeah.
Like I need to track down invocation of my satanic brother.
Yeah, there's a satanic Bible that says I dip my forefinger in the watery blood of your impotent mad redeemer. I gotta check this out.
Yeah, perhaps he's the Michael Cimino of Christian private press video, and that he saw an opportunity and he just ran with it to create something that wasn't in the marketplace. This like uptown presentation that was thoughtful and like really impactful, but ultimately is maybe neither.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely gets to a point where it's like so smart that it's completely dumb. I mean, it's like it's multiple layers of dumb. It's like the galaxy brain meme. It's like, I'm not going to fill out the whole thing, but like small brain is like rock and roll music is bad, and like galaxy brain is like the ultimate like pursuit of humans is like catharsis through art and music, and like it really sort of becomes this like meditation on like what actually is like the purpose of art. Like art is this sort of like supernatural, like otherworldly force, and that's like bad, but that's good. It's like it's very difficult really to see where they end up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when they're like breaking down the three parts of the soul and then comparing how each one of those parts works within music and the music making process.
Yeah. It's like really,
that's pretty interesting.
I thought it was beautiful. Like I wrote down in my notes, I wrote, basically this documentary is arguing that any kind of higher consciousness state produced by the making of artwork is dangerous occult magic. Are they wrong? And, you know, it was just kind of tough because like by the end of it, it was like, this doesn't just describe like Satanist art. This describes like any art that allows you to achieve an ecstatic state, you know?
Yeah, which is weird because that is also something that's like pretty prevalent in certain sects of Christianity, like speaking in tongues and letting the Holy Spirit work through you. But when it's like a guitar player saying that they feel like they're possessed on stage, then all of a sudden the possession has to have like demonic connotations.
Right.
What do you think about the guys' like scripture analyses? Are they on point most of the time, or is it kind of like a wild interpretation?
A lot of that seems cultural to me and specific to the time and like what's more popular with the church at that moment in time. I think scripture interpretation in general, it's hard to, when you're talking about like specifics like that, it's like, yeah, I guess you could interpret that. I don't know. I thought it was accurate to an extent that there's people I know who would say that that's how it is, but there's certainly other people I know who would not interpret it that way.
I really liked one of them made me laugh because he was quoting a couple of bands that were saying some stuff about looking into the eyes of God and like saying that you're not my God. And then he's like, but if these guys actually looked into the face of God, they would be blown to smithereens, as we can see in this scripture right here. It's just like a really funny, like snarky comment.
Storm the gates of heaven and look God right in the eye.
Both LaVey and County may want to reconsider this ambition. To gaze into the eyes of the glorified Christ would be bad enough. The Apostle John likened them to flames of fire. The Father's, however, would be instantly fatal.
Where it's like, okay, guys, but if you actually looked into the face of God, you would die.
Yeah, I don't remember having like, other than like total logical leaps like that, I don't remember having too many problems with the interpretation of his interpretation of the scripture, you know?
Yeah, I would say the bigger problem is the prioritizing, because I find that to be an issue that I take with conservative Christendom in general, where like they prioritize stuff in a way that is non-biblical, where it's like really important that people who are gay don't get married, and you're like, why is that a priority for
Right.
you of all of
Right.
the things in this fallen world that you would have a problem with?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It seems like a total misplace of interpretation. I remember what I was trying to say. Just like a scriptural interpretation that I thought was really interesting was he brought up the chapter 18 of First Kings, and he was talking about like the battle between Elijah and like the occult gods of I can't remember exactly which tribe he was like battling, and he used verses in there to compare like the way that the warlocks were like trying to invoke their satanic god. Is like he was trying to compare that to the way that like punks put safety pins through their faces and stuff, and, like
Right.
like the mutilation of their bodies in the name of like punk fashion was like akin to ritualistic self-mutilation.
The punk music revolution made self-mutilation a pop phenomenon. It became quite common to see young people stick safety pins through various parts of their body or carve slogans into themselves with razor blades. What's interesting, as well as critically important to note here, is that these mindless acts of violence are not unique to this era. The scriptures recall a time when God's prophet Elijah challenged Satan's prophet to a contest in the supernatural. 1 Kings 18 relates what the devil worshippers did in order to get Satan to move on their behalf. And so they leapt about and cried aloud and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood poured out upon them.
Yeah, so it's putting this unnecessary weight onto it when it's not actually like that.
Yeah,
When
it's
you're
not that
actually,
deep,
like,
bro.
Bored and you saw your friend do it.
Right. Yeah, he really thinks that there's like 5D chess happening all the time. Like it's like Illuminati trickle down of like rock and roll or punk culture. It's like Anton LaVey at the top of a pyramid, and he's like, we're going to have, we're going to show Johnny Rotten like carving a word in his like arm, and we're doing that to like invoke like early like Babylonian like ritual mutilation, and if I convince young people to do it, then that will feed in all this like satanic power. I don't know, it's just like it truly, bro, it is just simply not that deep. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and it also does this thing where society is just so godless that God is just nowhere to be found and has no power in this place.
Yeah.
Which is always strange to me, because it's like, don't you think God is like all powerful and like everywhere at once and
Right.
knows all? And I don't know. People, they get really caught up in blasphemy, and like it's this like horrible thing, and that like God is like, I guess, like cowering somewhere. I don't know. It's odd to me.
Well, punk was invented on the day that God rested. That's how they can get away with this.
Yeah, no, like you're right. Like God has absolutely no power, yet God somehow allowed Anton LaVey to like have dominion over the whole human race, as if he's not a fucking cartoon guy with a bald head. Like, I'm sorry, like, okay, I don't exactly know how to like bring this up, but like, okay, I think that this documentary definitely made some of these people seem like cool and countercultural. Like there were some bands I was like, oh yeah, that's fucking cool. But then there were other people where I was like, listen, I get why you're like culturally significant. It's not that I don't have any respect, but it's also like, I'm sorry, Anton LaVey looking like a Dungeons and Dragons dork to me in this documentary. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if you like read anything about Anton LaVey's biography, he founded the Church of Satan because he would go to Baptist church with his parents, and then he would play keyboard at some club, and he would see like people from the church like drinking and cheating on their wives. And so he like the hypocrisy of the church is what drove him to found the Church of Satan. And it's literally like all just kind of like a joke to him. He's never been like super serious about it. I mean, one of the phrases in the Satanic Bible that's in all caps is God's not dead, but he should be on Medicare. And then it's followed by like 3 exclamation points. So, I mean, that should tell you like how serious Anton LaVey truly takes himself.
Yeah.
So it's really funny to see it in this context where it's like, yeah, he has demonic powers and he's making teenage children suddenly chop off their mom's hands and then slice their faces off before killing themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like conservative Christians then create like fan fiction because they're like martyr fans or whatever, and they want like all this to be true because it's exciting when they could really just watch horror movies. This could have been solved if Christian horror movies were a thing at the time.
Yeah. And I mean, the Satanic Bible is like a bunch of like kind of elementary level like libertarianism.
Sure.
But I mean, one of the biggest things that is focused on it is basically do unto others as you would have do unto you. Like, don't hurt, like seek all pleasure in any form as long as it's not at the expense of another human being or living creature, which is just really funny that part is glossed over.
Yeah, did you cut that part out, Brett, when he said that? Is that what happened?
Those are the scriptures you cut out.
You know, to be honest, my editing style is that the second things start to get boring, I hit pause, the space bar, and then immediately make an edit point. And then if it's boring I'll just start shuttling through. And if I see 3 minutes of a visual of just words on screen with scripture, I cut them.
You were fair though. You left in some scripture. You didn't just like completely like dish it from the thing. But I think it was. They should have fucking hired you. I mean, in retrospect.
Yeah, really.
Is there something called the Action Bible where it's just like all of the like exciting parts of the Bible? Did I just make that up?
I think there's something called the Action Bible, but it's not that. But I really like that idea. I mean, you should fucking make that. The Bible's public domain.
I want to see that movie. We got to get Gabriel Sabloff back on the horn, the go-to Christian action director.
Yeah.
Well, do you, as hosts of Boys Bible Study, think that it's possible to create an alternate version of this film using scripture to prove that rock music is good and godly?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun question.
Absolutely. There's so much, like, I mean, there's more music that espouses the glory of Christ and religion than there is that. The thing is, like, 99% of like rock and pop music has nothing to do with Satanism and like shitting on the church.
Oh, Julian, that's
right.
That's no, it's all satanic. You've been tricked, my friend. You've been duped.
Well, yeah, no, I think like that's a fun question, Brett, because like the documentary itself like waxes on and on about the power of music. It really maintains that like music has a supernatural power that's like, very spiritual. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely like many things in the Bible about the power of music, sing songs unto the Lord, using music to praise and stuff like that. I mean, there's probably just like using compilations of that, you could prove that like music was, something that was just a gift given to humans, that maybe like music inherently praises the Lord just by existing. But,
actually, when I was in high school and started getting into like instrumental electronic music, I actually had that thought because I was still a Christian then. And I remember like Boards of Canada was my favorite band for a little while. And I was like, this is so good. Like, how could they not be Christian, basically?
Wow, that's beautiful.
Like, this has got to be inspired by God because it takes me to another place, basically.
I love that. Holy shit.
That's awesome.
It's like the Sistine
Even if they
Chapel.
weren't Christian, like the music came from God.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's my answer, Brett. Yeah, it's like one could argue, would certainly argue that Ronnie James Dio was blessed by God,
Yeah.
God
He's talking about the
powerful
holy
voice.
diver.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
I don't understand the point of this thing. Like you were saying earlier, is it just saying that don't ever do anything creative?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that is what he's saying. Because, but he's saying it in a very creative way, which is such a bizarre.
Yeah,
that's why I've been endlessly fascinated by Hell's Bells, is because every answer raises another question with it, which actually seems more like Judaism than Christianity. Speaking as a Jew, like we like to litigate. Not only just across the board, like with religion and all that stuff, like the internal rules of the religion.
Yeah, that's something I appreciate about Judaism. That it's always up for a debate. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you will be haunted by Hell's Bells in ways that will reverberate long after you've forgotten about it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's true. It definitely is like spinning through my mind now. A big question that I wanted to ask you, Bret, and also like it'd be fun to just like have a roundtable of all of us, is like who, based on like how he presented the musicians and artists and countercultural figures in this film, who looked cool and who looked not cool. Like I don't know, who looked. There were definitely times when he was presenting certain people's work where I was like, that is so fucking stupid. Like, please get another angle. This is so boring of you just saying like Jesus was wrong over and over again.
Yeah.
Who was good and who was not? That's what I want to know.
Like who after watching this thing emerges as like, oh, they're still cool, as opposed to the like, though that's no longer cool.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
I don't know. Well, like every clip, because of the points he's making, makes me appreciate rock and pop music all over again.
Sure.
But at the same time, Billy Idol looks a little dumb now. Still cool, but dumber. Anytime Pete Townsend opens his mouth, I'm like, ugh.
He was one that I picked out of the same way. Yeah, it was like, it's not that I don't have like respect for his body of work, but like in the way he was presented in this documentary when he was like, it's like I'm a different person on stage. I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. I don't want to.
That was his defense for when they found child porn on his computer.
Oh, Christ.
I was researching a character.
Doing that. I was researching the satanic imagery in this.
Yeah. If you've seen Hell's Bells, you will know that Satan did that.
It was such a weird feeling because like all the clips of like music videos were really cool.
Yeah.
But seeing so much like trolling of Christianity and like Jesus, it's just like, oh my God. It was like watching a Ricky Gervais
yes
like talk and you're just like, God damn, it is like the least creative thing to criticize religion.
Yes.
Like all of these people are just saying the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
And I get that it was like
times.
probably more shocking at the time because now you could like take a dump on a cross and you'd be like, it would just be another day. But like, it's just like so funny to see that over and over and over again, back to back to back over like a 30-year span. And you're just like, man, this was everybody's just got their one song where they're like, I hate Sunday school, and that's it.
Yes. That is definitely a recurring thing that I thought through this. I was like, wow, the Christians really do have a point. Like if this documentary was like dork on dork violence to me, it was like Christian dorks telling like scary metal dorks that their shit sucks. And it's like, okay. But there were some artists that I wrote down that I was like, these guys are great. Still love these bands. I think Psychic TV kicks so much ass. I love the way that they like subvert, and like anytime you get like a soundbite from Genesis doing anything, I'm always like, yeah, they kick ass.
So it's got that weird like delay pedal on it.
Yeah. That quote when they were talking about like the king of witches that died on Beltane, like the delay pedals happening. I was like, yeah, this fucks. I love Psychic TV.
We'd like to dedicate this concert to Alex Sanders, who died today, the full moon of Beltane, who was known as the king of the witches. and who was the man who made witchcraft and magic legal in Britain after a long struggle. So we'd like you to remember that. But the war goes on! Yeah!
I thought Madonna's Like a Prayer looked really good. Like even all these years later, like seeing the footage of it in the context of this documentary when she's just like all hot and like dancing in front of the burning crosses, I was like, damn, this really goes. Like that was a really cool piece of art, you know?
Yeah, that was cool. And then he was like, despite her being so cool, soda companies still hire her for work. Like,
Well,
what?
We have the context there was that the Madonna's Like a Prayer video was a long form Pepsi ad, and it was being broadcast, I believe, on like commercial TV for the first time.
I didn't know
like
that.
I believe this is a story. We can all go back and wiki fact check later. I believe that it was going to be a primetime premiere on network television, and it was paid for by Pepsi, and Pepsi didn't really know what the video was before it was airing, basically.
Oh, cool.
So she kind of pulled an art prank on America.
That's so
and
cool.
It got Pepsi to foot the bill. Go back and fact check me, but I think that's the story.
That's very cool. I want to believe. I thought, just like continuing my like hot or not, I thought John Lennon came off like a real asshole.
Yeah.
I mean,
always.
No shade on like I don't know. I've gone beyond like hating the you know, I feel like the Beatles are back in, but Lennon is out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
it does. It does.
That's one of
like,
many instances of him being a piece of shit.
He's like, I'll bloody piss on the nun. I don't care. It's
Yeah.
like, bitch, shut the fuck up. I don't care.
Yeah, dude, you're just like sitting in your fucking $1 million condo throwing fucking condoms at nuns. It's just like,
Wow, dude, amazing.
yeah.
Imagine, whoa.
This same blatant disrespect for the Messiah characterized the life and art of John Lennon. During the Beatles' formative years in Germany, another biographer recounts how on Good Friday, the day that marks the Lord's crucifixion, Lennon made some nuns the target of his abuse. As they left their convent to attend worship services, they were shocked to behold across the street a grotesque life-size effigy of Jesus on the cross, which John had fashioned and hung from his balcony. As the sisters gazed in astonishment at this sacrilegious display, John started pelting them with Durex condoms filled with water. To top it off, he urinated on them while crying, "Raindrops from heaven."
It's funny, and to think that he was like 40 years old doing that is just like so pathetic. Like if any of my friends were doing that at the age of 40, I would be like, you need to get like a job or something. You need to find God, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, I thought the bangles looked so cool.
Yeah.
That in my room by the bangles, that was I had heard it before casually. I never really like gave it much thought, but I guess it's supposed to be like about masturbation. I've never really listened closely to it, but that video, and the guy was like, and masturbation like opens you up to like being degraded by the world, and like they're showing like clips of they show like a Bible verse, I can't remember which one, like superimposed on like a still from the Bangles video, and I was like, that fucking goes hard. The Bangles are great.
Speaking of Christian hypocrisy and masturbation, I hope I've never told this. I hope I haven't told this story before on the podcast. But I had a history teacher in high school who told us that, I don't even know what this had to do with the lesson plan, but I just distinctly remember a day where he told us that masturbation is wrong and immoral because it goes against God, number one, and it is scientifically proven that if you look at porn and masturbate, you will be always looking for like the next level of self-pleasure, which will ultimately lead you to murder. Because you won't be able to satisfy yourself in any way. And he also told us that if he was ever the coach of a basketball team, he would have the worst player on his team go out at the beginning of the game and just take out the legs of the best player on the other team. Because you'd have to do anything to win the game.
That's really
I
cool.
thought those are my two main memories of that guy, and just the duality of man right there, with his
I love
morals
guys like
and then
that.
his desire to succeed at any
I want to see
cost.
his 3-hour documentary about whatever he wants it to be about.
I really appreciate AC/DC after seeing this whole doc again. Just a bit with AC/DC and the song Hell's Bells with the lyrics on the screen as they were, and then they kept cutting to other things, makes rock look just as cool as it is or was. And I don't know what point they were trying to make by using like one of the most epic rock songs possible.
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of got me a little amped seeing that in context of this, because it's like, oh, this actually really works, I guess.
Yeah.
This bangs.
I completely agree. I think AC/DC was a group that came off like their work stood the test of time. I remember thinking like, wow, they were playing Hell's Bells, and like, I've listened to some famous AC/DC songs. I've never gotten too deep into them, but like they were playing Hell's Bells, and I was like, wow, what an amazing vocal performance. Like this song is great, and yeah, that was definitely a band that I would put in the hot category after watching this.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that ran through my mind when watching this again, the whole thing starts off with Mick Fleetwood, which is hilarious to me.
Holy shit, I forgot about that part.
Yeah,
That's so
good.
funny.
I forgot about that.
Now,
What is this man doing? What is going through his mind?
So a little bit of my personal history. My very first concert was Fleetwood Mac at the Forum here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
In 87. And at that moment, Lindsay had left the band. He was no longer the front man. And so they got some like rando to fill in for him. And most of what I remember from that show is that it was piercingly loud. I'd never heard anything so loud as a little human. Mm-hmm. And then also at the encore, Mick Fleetwood got out from behind the drum kit, and he was wearing a MIDI trigger vest. It was a wearable MIDI trigger rig, and he would do kind of like he did like a Bobby McFerrin type thing where he was like smacking himself and triggering like sound effects, and it was nuts. And then I said, like years and years later, I see Hell's Bells for the first time, and the film opens with it. With him doing that on stage.
What a weird choice.
Oh, he was playing the vest?
Yeah, he was playing a MIDI triggered vest.
That's why, but they
I
were like
thought he was just rolling.
Right, yeah, but they were using this footage to make it look like this is what happens when rock stars are lost in like a trance of like delusion and ecstasy. They like look like this on stage.
What is wrong with this man?
It was a very striking image to put up front. I liked it.
I imagine like taking a Bobby McFerrin concert and just like, is this man invoking the Antichrist?
Right.
And he's singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
Yeah. It was funny because the thing it reminded me of most seeing Mick doing this is like Pentecostals when they're like speaking in tongues and like rolling on the ground and stuff.
I want to share my notes for Hell's Bells I was taking by like timestamp. Beginning of my notes, 126. I have no idea what the tone of this is at all. 220. Fleetwood Mac kind of owns. Those were the first two thoughts that crossed my mind while watching this.
My 220 note says, "What is wrong with this man?"
The prologue has a bunch of fake TV parody stuff, which is only in really the prologue, and I guess they ran out of money to keep doing location shoots, I will guess. But like the tone of this entire presentation is all over the place. Sometimes he'll be yucking it up, then it'll swing to dead serious, then it'll be like thoughtful, and then it'll be completely screeching halt, like weird supposition that he makes in his mind. So did you mind the tonal shifts, or are they part of the excitement of this piece?
Kept me awake.
Yeah, same.
Oh, definitely part of the excitement.
Almost to the very end.
Yeah, I would say, overall I liked it. I think it saved it from being like a slog. I was, I consider myself a very open-minded cinema goer, ready to be confused and baffled, but I did spend the first few minutes honestly thinking like, I'm truly not sure like where this is going. You know, like I knew like you sent it to us for good reason because I love your taste and stuff, but I couldn't even tell like, is this a parody? Is this like a Christian thing? You know, is this it was very difficult to tell, which was exciting.
And what do you think it is at the end?
Yeah, good point. I definitely think it's Christian. I think it's still unclear to me how much he enjoys the work that he's, you know, portraying as bad. But it's a very it's too good. it's one of those pieces of art that just got too good for its own good, and now it's something else.
I kind of like to think of it as like the ultimate level of like ironic music listener. Like, oh yeah, if you like Venom, if you don't like Venom, then you definitely won't like these bands, which you've never heard of. And if you don't like just like being like very coyly like, don't listen to all these cool bands if you don't like that band. Like a very delicately crafted psyop for the indie music.
Yeah, maybe it was like the first documentary to approach like 2021 levels of internet irony. Like maybe that's what I found kind of remarkable about it. Like in its baffling nature, it actually felt like pretty current. You know?
Yeah, it was so weird to hear like bands name dropped that I didn't even know existed until like my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Something else that I think it's really fun to watch this video today in the year that we're watching it, since rock is no longer the dominant musical force in the culture. Pretty sure rock went away about 10 years ago. Sure. It feels like that's when rock acts stopped being on SNL.
Sure.
If you go back in the geologic layers of SNL musical guests, like 2012, let's say, is like that's the year rock acts declined in fewer numbers on SNL. And now it's like either legacy acts like Jack White or throwbacks like Greta Van Fleet are the only rock acts on SNL, and everybody else is
satanic.
I know.
Yeah.
That is true satanic music.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, I mean, God, I have like music journalist friends who would like phrase this a lot better than I could, but like there was this like cultural flattening of pop music that happened like in the last 10 years. It's like in the face of information from every subculture being like more widely available than ever, and you able to like access as many different influences as possible. Ironically, the complete inverse happened, that now like rock and pop and like dance are all the same things. And it's like ostensibly Imagine Dragons is like a rock band, right?
Yes. Yeah. Burger Records bands and Imagine Dragons is what rock is now.
Right. And it's also, very, very weird flattening there.
Also, I suppose you could categorize Machine Gun Kelly as rock.
Sure, why not?
Even though he made a shift, yeah.
Like the thing I heard of his more recently sounded like 311. You know, like
that's like the rock now. New rock music is trying to go back to like early 2000s pop punk and jam band sounding stuff.
Sure.
It's just like you were saying, Ash, how everything is like flattened out, and even like in terms of like subversion, like it's honestly more shocking to see a cross right side up than it is to see an upside down cross.
Yeah,
anymore.
That is a big feeling with why, like, listen, I mean, speaking just for myself, like I'm sincere in being like a Christian, but the fact is that like I really think that like at this point, especially after watching this documentary, like if you want to be edgy, like be a Christian, like legitimately, like that's like way more.
You'll get canceled.
Yeah, seriously,
you'll get canceled for being a Christian.
Yeah, you're
not going to be on the Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah, dude, you'll get downvoted
solely because you're a Christian, not for any other reason.
Right. Like, yeah, everything has flattened, including any type of like libido or whatever. Like it's just like very impossible to be subversive without like just straight up making a snuff film, and like even that's been done. So it's like literally just like glorify God. Like I don't know what to
It's
tell
that
you.
guy. What was that guy in the punk band from Texas where he was like trying to get the cop killed in the audience, and then it cut to him on like a mission trip, and he was like, "Rock and roll almost ruined my life."
The Huns?
Yeah, the Huns. That's like the ultimate level of subversion.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Yeah, what was his actual line, I think, was
Rock and roll is a lie. And that lie almost killed me.
That rocks. Very cool.
Now that's punk.
Yeah. Not to like jump, but one thing I wanted to make sure I said in this conversation that I wrote down was that I thought that this documentary had one of the most compelling, or at least interesting, anti-drug arguments that I've seen, which is like, it's actually one that I'd never heard before. I sort of thought I knew why Christians didn't like drugs and being intoxicated. And my thought was that, it like maybe like sort of tears down your walls of like what is good behavior. It loosens your morals, it lowers your inhibitions, and like makes it easier to sin. But in this documentary, it actually said that the high of being on drugs is like an access to a spiritual realm that is like counterfeit. It said that it was like sorcery, and that is why you shouldn't do drugs. It pointed to like George Harrison doing LSD and getting into like Hinduism or whatever, as a symbol of how like drugs can like deprogram your mind to be away from God. Thought that was cool.
Yeah, it is funny how like the idea of opening your mind is seen as illegitimate because it's like using a substance, but like, yeah, like the only proper way to get your beliefs is to have them conditioned into you through repetition from the day you're born.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And therefore then, anything like rock music, which again provides like rock music, it wants to provide this noisy sort of like chaotic space. It kind of creates this little like chaotic space, when you're watching it live and you're jumping around or, pushing each other around. It provides this opportunity for chaos which is really like thrilling and relaxing because, it breaks the norms of the order of your waking life and of like group social interaction. And, I guess like the Christian argument against it is just like by doing that, it is like ritualistic and like blasphemous, like just by being anti-order, it is inherently like blasphemous. Very interesting.
So what did we learn about Eric Holmberg's LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. What did we learn?
It looks like Reel to Reel has been going for almost 40 years.
Wow.
50 years and still going today.
He has a website, the Apologetics Group.
That's interesting that he's into apologetics, though.
I don't know what that means.
It's like, hold on, I'll get an actual definition so I don't butcher this. Apologetics is the religious discipline of defending religious doctrines through systematic argumentation and discourse.
Oh, okay. So like literally the opposite of what I think is important.
Yeah,
because like I have
pretty
maintained
much.
whether or not like I'll listen to other views, but like in doing the show, I've like maintained a pretty consistent argument that like it is my personal opinion that is like defeating the entire purpose of faith and spirituality. Like the point of faith is that you can't prove it. Like I don't prove it. I feel it. I have an instinct about the world, and this instinct brings me peace and joy and happiness, and like I think it will lead into like a life beyond this one that will be pleasing to me, and I will not be able to prove that. That's the whole point.
You brought that point up for End of the Harvest too, which I think is interesting because that was a Cristiano Brothers movie, and I could see them being way into this documentary.
What else did I want to say? Oh, I wanted to talk about some more of the like backmasking, because like,
oh yeah, this is the crown jewel of the whole documentary.
yeah,
Yes,
and like,
this is so funny.
I'm not gonna lie, like I was, you know, watching this and like obviously like getting stoned because it was great, and then like it got to the backmasking part and I was like, this is fucking scary. I don't like listening to backmasking. It's very scary.
It really annoyed me that he kept saying that things were recorded backwards.
Yeah,
because
what?
It's not recorded backwards. It's recorded forwards and then played backwards.
Yeah, what? Well, I guess he was trying to talk about the ones that are supposed to be like they sound understandable in forwards lyrics, like that, you know, it's like it sounds like a normal song, but you play it backwards, like the fucking amazing one from Queen. That was another one. Bites the dust to start to smoke marijuana. Start to smoke marijuana, just like over and over again.
Our next example is by Queen from their song Another One Bites the Dust, one of the most popular and enduring songs in rock history. Taking the same section and playing it backwards, we hear
There's like, I think he was trying to make the argument that literally like Freddie Mercury figured out like if he said that backwards, it would turn to Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
There's no way anyone could ever do that.
I bet you could write an entire play for the theater that's about the research team that tried to discover all the backwards masking.
I thought that they were going to get into like, and here's another one, if you play Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz at the same time,
Yeah.
they sync up. And if you put sugar on a lemon and bite into it and spin around, you'll get high.
And if you say Bloody Mary 3 times in front of the bathroom mirror with the lights off, it is all the same type of.
In that the kid from the Life commercial put Pop Rocks and Pepsi in his mouth and his head exploded.
And you can see a munchkin hanging himself in the background of the, the Wizard of Oz.
Now here's all the penises hidden on the cover of The Little Mermaid.
Oh, let's not forget the dead child and the reflection in 3 Men in a Bed.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one.
But
That's a great example of backmasking.
But yeah, no, it's all the same. I thought that was really clever in the documentary. I mean, like, you know, too clever to the point where it was completely inane, but like it tied the idea of playing a song backwards all the way to like the work of Aleister Crowley. And then it claimed again that like the rock music Illuminati has taught all of its artists how to like speak backwards so that they could, you know, deliver these hidden messages.
Crowley, like many sorcerers, express an interest in backwards phenomena. For example, in his most famous work, Magic in Theory and Practice, he encourages his disciple to train himself to think backwards by external means, as set forth here following. Let him learn to write backwards. Let him learn to walk backwards. Let him constantly watch, if convenient, films and listen to records reversed.
I've gotta say though, the Stairway to Heaven one, that sounds real.
What was that one?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
It was like Satan. It just talking about Satan a lot.
Oh, my sweet Satan.
Yeah.
Right.
It was good. I was like, wow, these guys really got it.
To me, the Queen one did sound the most, even though it's completely not constructed this way. It did sound like start to smoke marijuana. Start to smoke marijuana. Start to smoke marijuana.
You do a good backwards voice.
Well, I've lived with this video for so long.
You memorize
Like-
the inflection of it.
Hell's Bells is like my uncle at this point.
Totally. I mean, I can really understand why you spent that much time. It is like a very deep piece of media. Like there's so much to bite
Like
into
the
here.
ELO one is like, Christ, you're infernal. Right?
I laughed out loud when he was like, let's look at some other hidden messages in artists. Next up, the Electric Light Orchestra. And I was like, okay.
It's funny too, though. They're showing all this media that's not hidden at all. That's like the main point of what they're complaining about. So, like, why would it be a bigger deal if they say to smoke marijuana backwards?
Yeah. Oh, and then there's a Rush song that they played.
That one was
backwards.
good. I can't remember what that one was, but I remember being like, "Whoa." I don't know. Honestly, I was on marijuana, so I was kind of getting deprogrammed while that was happening.
Listen to the Queen song.
Yeah, I did. As soon as they started playing that one, I was like, "Yo, Freddie says I got to toke up."
Yeah, this so with Real to Real Ministries, there's other documentaries. There's one about Hollywood.
Oh wow!
And there may or may
well,
not.
that is
Sorry,
everything they say in there is true. I don't even have to watch it.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be like satanic pedophilia.
Yes.
And that is true.
Yeah. And there may or may not be one about hip hop. I'd have to go back and look.
I hope so.
That sounds scary.
Yeah.
Brett, like, I've got to say, like, I mean, not that I've seen a ton in this genre, but of what I've seen, this was probably the best executed. I
For
would
propaganda, it's pretty fun.
say. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Very fun. Oh, except one thing that wasn't fun, just totally unnecessary, when he says, "Unless you're deaf, rock and roll has shaped your view of the world." And he was like,
Yeah, what?
There's really no reason to shit on deaf people
Yeah,
all of a sudden. They can
their
also
shapeless
appreciate.
world.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They can't see anything.
Right,
Like, whatever. I don't have to explain myself.
Yeah, well, he was also talking about how all the visual iconography and all the hidden symbols and everything were like just as damaging. So yeah, he was just trying to get a couple jokes in, but they didn't work. I love when he said that Earth, Wind, and Fire were pro devil for suggesting that, like, you know, Buddha and Krishna and Jesus are like, he was showing like an Earth, Wind, and Fire record cover and being like, yeah, man, rock on.
Likewise, the inside of this album by Earth, Wind, and Fire shows various religious symbols, Christian, mixed in with symbols for Hinduism, Buddhism, and the occult. The album title spells it out, all in all. In other words, it's all the same thing.
Oh, what was the deal with it was towards the beginning. He shows somebody's head fall off when they're headbanging.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
Trying to tell you about the dangers of rock, but that actually reminded me when DC Talk's single for Jesus Freak came out in the summer of '95, I think it was. I did headbang to that, and I ended up pinching a nerve in my neck.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is such Christian kid luck.
Yeah.
That only happens to a Christian kid. Like, you permit yourself to get lost in like the artistic ecstasy of a DC Talk song, and like you suffer physical pain because of it.
I should have watched this doc first.
The
Rock and roll's
passion.
dangerous.
Yeah.
That was your passion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked when he hard-boiled an egg by holding it up to the speaker.
Oh, that was funny.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah.
He got a room full of extras. It was one of the few times that he involved like extras in his demonstration. He like got a lot of kids in there to pretend they were at a rock concert while he was like holding an egg up to a speaker. And I was like, where do you get those kids?
I wonder, like, Brett, did you say that like the stuff in the montage of commercials at the beginning, was that all like created for this documentary?
Can't tell. It fits the ambitious Richard Kelly-esque tone of this film.
So glad you said that.
Because I mean, if that's the case, then like if you're ironically promoting satanic rock music, I mean, isn't that exactly what a lot of these bands are doing? Is like ironically promoting Satanism? Because I know like a lot of these artists, and this is irrefutable evidence, but a lot of these artists will like have been on the record by saying like, oh yeah, they're just having fun, they don't actually believe in a lot of this like
of
satanic
course.
stuff that they're. But I mean, it's the same exact thing as putting it, like shooting it and being like, oh yeah, hey, we love Satan, wink wink.
If they talked for even a half second about the fact that this is all machinations of the music industry and it's about selling records, then the entire reason for this 3-hour movie would blow away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If they focused on the real Satan, which is capitalism.
Right.
Okay.
I'd love to hear this guy's take on Insane Clown Posse.
Well, one thing just about like the way it took on selling records. First of all, Brett, I just wanted to say I almost compared this documentary to Southland Tales, and I was like, don't say that. You just compare. Oh, did I? Okay, never mind. I literally forgot. I was like, I just compare everything to Southland Tales, but I was
gonna say, to be fair, everything makes you think of Southland Tales.
I mean, when you make art that's about everything, then everything reminds you of it. But yeah, this was very Richard Kelly-esque. There was a scene in this documentary that seemed to imply they just the way he did like the editing and the presentation. He was like, some bands like authentically promote Satan, and then he was showing like Merciful Fate, and then he was like, for some it's about selling records, and then he showed Ozzy Osbourne, and I was like, damn, like this guy's calling Ozzy a sellout. Like he was literally like, listen to the real shit, like Merciful Fate, like fuck Ozzy.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think this thing was like. It could be seen as just a total ironic, like, no, this is the cool music you should be listening to.
Well, okay, so here's another theory, another scenario for a future play that no one will have time to write. Eric Holmberg gets to, it's kind of like an 80s comedy almost. Eric Holmberg tries to raise money to start a production company because he's a struggling filmmaker. And who does he get money from? He has to make a deal with the devil, in quotes, to work with an extreme conservative, very rich person who will fund his production company if he makes, a movie about the evils of rock music. And he's like, fuck, I'm a rock fan. What am I going to do?
Right.
And it turns into like a sitcom-y type thing where he has to make an anti-rock film. He's like the biggest rock fan he knows, and he's being paid to make anti-rock propaganda. However, this also supposes that because he's like a maker of propaganda, he'll do anything for money.
Now, I truly do think that this was funded by the record industry to help boost the sales of some of their.
Oh, that's possible.
Smaller bands.
That's possible.
Because I mean, I would never in a million years think that I would see like the Frogs in a documentary outside of a documentary about the Frogs.
Yeah. But let's not forget that he's taking the Frogs at face value when ultimately decades later you realize, oh, that's not how that was supposed to be taken. Right. The Frogs were a band that traded on just doing some shocking thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the subject matter for that record, and they didn't ever talk about it again because it was like they're like the Residents or something.
Right.
And the guy's just interpreting it as real.
Homosexual rock band The Frogs glorify pedophilia on their,
Yeah.
I was like, go off, Kings.
But like he has to be into rock. Why would he spend so much time talking about it?
Right.
Then?
Right.
He likes a certain kind of rock, and he doesn't want you to like the bad rock.
Right.
At one point, he does dive directly into the satanic panic thing for like 5 minutes, meaning your classic Geraldo type satanic panic, where he's like, this 14-year-old boy I was about to meet in person shot his mother and ripped his father's face off with a knife or something like that.
Tommy Sullivan had taken a scout knife and brutally killed his mother, amputating her right hand and slicing her face off her skull. The only real clues were found in Tommy's room and notebook. During the previous year, he had become involved in the occult, and the vehicle for his satanic initiation, heavy metal rock and roll.
That was scary.
He follows it up after that segment with, now, we're not trying to suggest that if you listen to rock music, you're going to kill your parents.
But Crowley is on 10,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he spends 3 hours talking about it.
Right.
Yeah, they imply that this is like so common it's a problem, but they can only give like 3 examples of like people killing somebody and listening to rock music at the same time.
Yeah.
And Yeah, no one's ever had a violent, manic episode fueled by Christianity or an obsession with religion.
Yeah, right.
I think the problem is that the music industry was having too much fun and making too much money to even address these complaints. Because back then it was like, don't censor us. It was strictly constitutional, like First Amendment. Don't mess with our free speech and et cetera. And I don't know. It was wild. It's amazing for something that is claiming to be so media literate. They're ignoring the elephant in the room, which is it's an act to sell records.
Yeah.
But then it would have to acknowledge that they are an act as well.
Right. Everyone's on so many levels of kayfabe that it's just like, yeah.
Which lends this movie to being like Richard Kelly's movies, and that it's meandering. Right. It doesn't really hold together, but it'll fascinate you if you pay attention to it.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
And I still don't like Southland Tales, but I understand that people do like it.
Oh, Brett. Listen, it's literally like one of the most, it's an American myth that ranks just under like Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan. In my opinion, it is an epic American myth in the style of George Washington and the Cherry Tree, you know? Well, what do you say, boys? Should we give this thing the official Boys Bible Study rating?
Yeah.
Cool.
I give this movie, I give it 11 goes up to 11s. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that works. Well, you know what? I would say that Hell's Bells was a very like sprawling and informative yet baffling take on the world of rock and roll. It proved to me both that rock and roll kicks ass, and also rock and roll is one of the worst wastes of time of all of contemporary culture. I'm gonna have to give this film 5 out of 5 litanies of Satan. Because Diamanda Galas's appearance in this documentary were highlights for me. I thought that was really cool. I love her. She is so cool. Also, it's just like an aside, they misread, like, you know, litanies of Satan. Yeah, it obviously uses this satanic and, you know, you could read it as blasphemous, like, imagery, but it's like, it's supposed to be this whole thing about like the AIDS crisis. It's like, that's like the stated objective of the work of that album. It's like, it's not even necessarily supposed to be a commentary on religion as much as like a protest record about the handling of the AIDS crisis. So, you know, just willfully, shallowly misread, you know, obviously. But anyway.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to give it a one whopping Daryl Hall out of one whopping Daryl Hall. Hold the oats. I just thought it was really funny that they threw him in there because he like gave an interview where he was like, I guess started getting like, I mean, it's basically like, you know, if anybody who gets bored and gets on Wikipedia and just reads like skims through like 4 different articles about religion, but because he said one thing about Aleister Crowley, they were like, yeah, he's a Satanist.
That was so kick-ass. I almost brought that up, but I forgot. But yeah, I was like, yo, Daryl Hall fucks.
Yeah.
Love this guy.
I gained a lot more respect.
And Daryl Hall also admits to a fascination for the infamous Satanist. As he told Penthouse magazine in 1987, around 1974, I graduated into the occult and spent a solid 6 or 7 years immersed in the Kabbalah and the Chaldean, Celtic, and Druidic traditions. I also became fascinated with Aleister Crowley, the 19th century magician who shared these beliefs.
This movie was a lot of fun. I have a lot more bands to look up now. I'm going to give it a perfect 3 out of 3 parts of the soul, the mind, the will, and the emotions.
When we talk about the soul, we are speaking of the human personality and its 3 component parts, the mind, the will, and the emotions.
Yeah. Banger. Brett, I'm so glad you showed this to us. It's like off our beaten path, and it really expanded my mind. I had so much fun talking about it with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. I had falsely assumed that this was just common lore amongst A, found footage fans and makers, and B, people who would know about weird Christian private press videos.
I have seen a couple clips from this before, but never this much of it. I was going to say the whole thing, but I guess you took out all the scripture because you've been had your mind poisoned by rock and roll.
Yeah, I do feel like I left enough of it in so you get the flavor.
Yeah, you were fair. I think you were fair. You let them tell their story, you know. But yeah, Bret, you know, we already, of course, here at BBS love Museum of Home Video, but can you please tell anyone listening who might not be familiar how they can check out your show and what else you might be doing right now?
Sure. I do a weekly show on Twitch that is a found footage variety show. It's called Museum of Home Video. And it's every Tuesday starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. It's generally hour and a half to 2 hours. It's a lot of original found footage cuts of mine, and then just pieces I preserve in their entirety because they're just so amazing. Like, well, basically the thesis of my show is the history of showbiz. And, you know, one of the pieces that I preserved recently, you know, found on a tape and made sure that it should stay in the public consciousness is the Arsenio Hall show appearance in '89 by Jennifer Tilly. I think this piece exemplifies what we're trying to do at Museum of Home Video. It's like a 2-segment piece, meaning like on the original show, Jennifer Tilly was there for 2 whole segments, which is like 15 minutes of screen time. And it's one of the most unhinged performances on a talk show, because is it a performance? Is it like what she's like in real life? Is she nervous? Is she high? Is she on something else? Like, where is she going with this? And also, I think that Arsenio Hall show was great with guests, and he wasn't that great of an interviewer, but his show was culturally significant because of the depth of the people that he had on. And this Jennifer Tilly thing must be seen to be believed. So that's the kind of stuff that you can expect to see on the show, or other late night talk show excerpts or cut downs of movies where I don't want to show you, like Boys Bible Study does. Sometimes you don't want to show the whole thing because then people won't come back the next show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If you're into Boys Bible Study, there's a chance you'll be into my thing. So.
Oh yeah, no, I've observed people on both ends of that fence. I've seen people in your chat who I see in ours, and I love that. So yeah, anyone who appreciates found footage and just stuff that's off the beaten path of media, absolutely check out Museum of Home Video. Thanks everyone for subscribing to our Patreon. Everyone who subscribes to the show in general, we really appreciate it. Our patrons on the $20 tier, who we shout out on every episode. Shout outs Nicole, Marissa, Russell, and Jeff. We love you, our patron saints. Thank you very much. And from all of us here on Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, our special guest today, Bret Berg, we would like to say, peace be with you.
And also with you.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day you